Hey everyone, thanks for checking out a Press Check special. I'm your host, Jeremiah. Today we're going to be watching Kash Patel do an interview with Brett Baier on Fox News. The reason why I picked Fox News is because Fox News is doing the first interview of Kash Patel, at least one that Kash Patel is willing to do a full interview on. My suspicion and prediction will be that other networks will try to get Kash Patel on there, and they don't want to do the first interview so that they can get Kash Patel on a bunch of gotcha questions after they've listened to what Kash Patel has to say to Brett Baier. Personally, if I was Kash Patel, I wouldn't give those networks the time of day. However, he's very witty and he can hold his own against them, so maybe he'll go on there to make them look stupid. Whatever happens, happens, but this is the first interview, and this is going to be my special reaction to it, and exclusively just this. On Saturday, I will be coming out with my newest episode, episode 3, and I've been trying to fine tune my show more and more, whether it's video, audio, and just my presentation in general. I want to thank all the people who have subscribed to my channel. I'm getting close to 3,000 views, which isn't bad for a little over 2 weeks. And a special shout out to a friend of mine named Mickey. He is a guy I work with when I'm not doing this, and he's a huge supporter. He's my first subscriber. My other subscriber that is a big supporter is my brother Tyler. And Tyler's probably out there listening to this right now, driving a big oil truck, and that's what he likes to do. So he's got a lot of time to listen to stuff like this. So thank you, everyone. Now, without any further ado, let's get to the interview.
We're joined by FBI Director Kash Patel. Thanks so much for the time.
Welcome to Quantico, Brett.
This hasn't been on TV, this kind of behind the scenes. This is where an FBI agent or analyst starts their journey, right?
Absolutely. The first grade facilities that we are trying to dedicate to the men and women who want to join the FBI need some upgrading, as well as the standards that we need them to meet the violent crime. And all of that is engineered right here in Quantico, Virginia. And we're thrilled that you're coming here for a behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that the standards of law enforcement and military have been dramatically damaged since Joe Biden was in office. Democrats have always used those places as social experiment platforms, mostly because they can force it upon them. Once you're in the military, you're considered government property, and you've signed your life temporarily away to literally be enslaved to the government. They can tell you to die on a hill, and they can punish you outside of standards of your due process, which they falls into the UCMJ and things of that nature. So once a liberal gets into office, you have no choice but to comply with whatever social experiment they put upon you. And we're seeing the fallout of that today because the recruitment numbers during Biden have been dismal, and it's good that we are starting to get back to the normal ideals of law enforcement, the FBI, the CIA, and the military at large. So hopefully they can do this. The problem is the executive, by design, controls these things. He is the commander in chief. And so not only do we have to change these things for this administration, but make sure it stays changed, which the only way we can do that is by putting another conservative minded person in charge of these entities. So, anyway, back to the show.
So applications to be an FBI agent, back in March, it was about 5,600. The last time the Bureau saw monthly figures like this was back in April 2016. But you're seeing big numbers.
We're seeing huge numbers, and I think that's in large part to the administration's response on which way the FBI wants to go. Last year alone, the average for per month application was about 2,500.
People interested in these lines of work,
the first 2 full months of applicants we've had since I've been in the seat,
they're going to be able to do their jobs,
5,700 applicants a month. So that shows me there's an excitement for the American citizen to join the Bureau.
All right, so let's talk about some of the things that you're doing. You're doing a lot of things all at once. One of the operations is on fentanyl, Operation Raptor. It's really across 4 continents, but you not only the fentanyl, but also the precursors to fentanyl from China.
Brett, almost no one's talking about it. Fentanyl is a synthesized manufactured drug. You don't clip it from a tree. And if you want to choke off the amount of fentanyl that's pouring into America, that's killing an American citizen almost every 7 minutes.
This is by design with China. China wants to kill us. They play a long game. And if China can poison our youth and destroy the family unit in the United States through drugs, they sure as hell are going to do it. The Russians were doing this in the 60s. They were introducing drugs like psychedelics and the counterculture movement. They infiltrated our universities in places like Berkeley, which has spread from coast to coast, all the way to Columbia, where we're watching Jewish people try to get into classes, and pro-Palestinians not allowing them to get their education that they pay for, which is illegal. It's not freedom of speech if you're accosting or hurting another group of people. That's not peaceable protest, and there's no excuse for it on either side for that matter. If you want to have the January 6th conversation on the left, we can have that, but let's listen to this. Maybe they'll touch on it.
You got to go to the source. So one of the first things I did when I became the director of the FBI, I said, we're going to mainland China. We're hitting up the fentanyl precursor laboratories and the banks that are moving the money and the transshipment routes. We started that over almost 90 days ago. We're going to suffocate the snake. We're going to cut off its head. We're going to use our interagency partners at Treasury for sanctions, at State Department for diplomatic negotiations. But the simple fact is the Chinese and the CCP have gotten smart. They said, okay, we're going to stop sending fentanyl precursors directly to Mexico because you've done such a good job at suffocating the southern border.
Which is
awesome. We're going to send them elsewhere through other agencies, through other countries, and we are attacking those points to choke off the fentanyl precursor distribution. No one has done that before.
Here's something no one talks about. If China was running at least at large, the Panama Canal, which we dug with our hard money and sweat. That's a really easy point to be bringing in fentanyl unchecked off giant shipping containers and loading our country full of fentanyl. And there's nothing good about fentanyl. I don't care if you're pro pot. I don't even care if you're pro like cocaine at this point. It's proven that especially people who were not exposed to it at all, when they get a dose of fentanyl, it is easily fatal. And it's so bad now that a kid can't even go buy pot if he's curious or rebellious without risking killing himself, and he may not even know what's in it and may not have the wherewithal to understand that there could be fentanyl in there that's going to kill him. And the Chinese know exactly what they are doing with this drug and what it's doing to us, and they're doing it on purpose. And if that's acceptable to Americans, then we got a bigger problem.
To date, this year, we have seized 1,000 kilograms of fentanyl in the United States of America. That's 480 million lethal doses. That's enough to kill everyone in America and Canada combined. And that's just in these 3 months.
You know, you coming in, before you got this job, were obviously a critic of the FBI, how it was being operated. Now, after being on the job for as long as you've been,
I want to buy your house. I can pay you cash for your house no matter what condition it's in.
Okay.
If you need to sell your house for any reason,
this is going on,
click the button under this video to see if my offer is right.
Been on the job. What about the FBI did you get wrong before becoming director? Like, did you have some preconceived notion that turned out to be wrong about the Bureau?
I think what I was a critic of was the leadership, people who sat in this seat before me and people who were the deputies and the very senior portions of the Bureau who manipulated and weaponized the Bureau. I was a fierce critic of it because I led the Russiagate investigation, and I proved that my predecessors went to a federal court and lied to them just to weaponize the FBI and the DOJ. That is 100% true.
Now let me ask the left something. Do they really think that the public is so stupid that they don't know if you could weaponize sacred as the Federal Bureau of Investigation against a political opponent you don't like, that even if they were for investigating Trump, they don't realize that that could be turned around against them? So do you think that's going to help recruiting numbers? I don't want to be in the FBI. I mean, maybe now, but I remember thinking during these investigations, like, what a shameful, low time for the FBI. The FBI should be garnering the most ultimate trust of the American people as the chief investigative enforcement agency of the United States. And instead, it's a political football, and it's absolutely filthy.
I think one of the things that surprised me the most, and pleasantly so, was that the amount of men and women at the FBI that hated that they did that to the Bureau. And
Which
that
is
when I got in
awesome
the
to
seat,
know.
when Dan Bongino got in the seat, they said, we want to fix this place. We want to work with you. We've been trying to do it for years. We've been trying to increase training. We weren't able to. We've been trying to take the technological advancements around the world and import them into the FBI. That hasn't been done. And so we've just seen a void in terms of long-range planning at the FBI that all the men and women at the FBI wanted to do, and their leadership wouldn't let them.
You know, you were on with Maria a few weeks ago, and you said this.
What we can do now is continue to put out the documents and the information that these people withheld from the American public. You're about to see a wave of transparency.
What do you mean?
Just give us about a week or two.
All right, we're almost at 2 weeks. So this is about Crossfire Hurricane. You just talked about that, all that you've been learning. Can you give us a little of that wave of transparency?
Absolutely. So just quickly on Crossfire Hurricane, that is a continuing production. We have found material, and I'm the Crossfire Hurricane guy, that I didn't even know existed in FBI holdings.
So there's been held someplace else, or?
That's been stashed away in locations that people thought we wouldn't find it because we wouldn't know to look for it there. And as promised with my congressional partners, I'm working with Congress on constitutional oversight because that's what the American people deserve. And those documentations have been...
That means, folks, in layman's terms, you're being represented while he does this investigation. He's not like Comey or all the ones that runs these agencies. He's taking the information, these big packages, and he's bringing them to the Congress so that each representative of each district and all their constituents have a voice in what is going on. That is how democracy is supposed to
flowing to Congress nonstop on a rolling basis since that interview. But more importantly, people have had questions about January 6th and whether or not there were FBI sources, not agents, sources on the ground during January 6th. And I told you I would get you the definitive answer to that, and we have. And we are in the process, again, of working with our partners to divulge that information, and it is coming.
How's that make you feel?
And I will tell you this. The answer to that question will surprise and shock people because of what past FBI leaders have said about it.
Former FBI Director Chris Wray eventually admitted to...
Another fake Republican, just like Comey. These guys are rhinos. These guys are neocons. The rhinos and neocons right now that I'm telling you, they say they're Republican and conservative so they can get that voting base, but they actually vote and operate from a leftist point of view. So even if you're on the left, I think you could agree that's dirty. That's like having a wing of the Democrat Party who says they're liberal, but whenever they vote, they go vote conservative.
Congress, there were 26 FBI confidential human
like moles,
sources
spies,
in around the Capitol January 6th,
double
but
agents,
not actual agents.
turncoats.
Can you say that's true? Are there more than that? What you're learning from that?
I can say that that is definitely a piece of the truth. Why it took a ton of time for and questioning in Congress for the director to get that point is what I'm trying to eliminate from the FBI. If Congress asks you a question under oath, whether or not there were sources in around January 6th at the Capitol, you as the director of the FBI need to know that and not deflect and give a DC answer. You have to be prepared for that. And that's the answer we're giving. That's the answer Chris Wray should have given.
How could you not know?
And eventually everybody's going to know the whole picture.
Yeah, because the American people deserve that. And look, no one's more frustrated than me. Remember, I was chief of staff of the Department of Defense.
Let's just say that there were people who hated Trump who are politically appointed within the FBI because all the top are politically appointed by the president, that they work at their pleasure. And those people bring in a circle within the FBI who are sympathetic to destroying Donald Trump. And you send those people to that rally, you throw out the idea that power of suggestion for people to go down to the Capitol and protest. And then you have a couple FBI goons walk up to the Capitol and go inside. And it's sort of odd when footage surfaces that the police are just letting them in. Did they know something? Why would you just let people in? What are you guarding if you're doing that? Just saying.
On January 6th, we said
Very
that we
possible.
were ready, and the president had previously authorized the National Guard to be there days in advance. I spent
Facts.
2 years, a small fortune, grand juries to testify to the truth. And what happens now, years later? We were right. Bowser and Pelosi rejected that offer, and instead of figuring out how to prevent.
If I remember right, Bowser is the mayor of D.C. Pelosi, as the Speaker of the House, is in charge of Capitol security. So they were asked the Washington, D.C. police force to bolster security. They asked Nancy Pelosi to bolster Capitol Police, and they were denied. Why?
Prevent security lapses like that ever
Convenient.
again. The American public spent tens of millions of dollars and countless hours on TV listening to conspiracy theories because those in positions of leadership failed to tell the American public the truth.
But there is a lot of conspiracy theories out there.
There are.
The Epstein thing, you dealt with Maria, you said, as far as you know, he killed himself.
I'm telling you, he killed himself.
The other thing on the internet is the Epstein files. What's the answer to that?
The answer to that is
Don't fall prey to this Epstein skepticism. I said it before on my show, and I'm going to say it again. There's nothing that would warm of a liberal's heart than to watch conservatives eat conservatives. They want us to have doubt. They want us to turn against each other and have these inner fights and lose sight and unity of this agenda. Don't fall for it, please. The saying is divide and conquer. It's much, this stuff goes down to Napoleon, where he would shave off pockets of the enemy army so that he could whittle them up. And it's the same kind of concept. This is a tactic. It's a trick.
is the same as everything else. I'm not going to withhold information from the American public ever, but I'm also not going to rush to get it out there in a format in which they can't rely on it. So on the Epstein matter or any other matters, we are diligently working on that, and it takes time to go through years of investigations, years of political maneuvering, and years of cover-up to get the American people what they deserve. And that's what I'm going to give them on everything.
Yeah. And if somebody says, how long is that going to take? You know, we always see investigations in Washington that end up in blue ribbon commissions,
to get to the truth.
And it doesn't seem like anything comes.
That's what matters,
from it.
the
Do
truth.
you think
Getting rich during retirement isn't possible, right? Wrong. Here's how Americans are absolutely smashing their retirement goals.
I don't want to.
actual prosecutions will come from some of this stuff?
I think from some of this stuff, when we go back and look at things like the pipe bomber case, the cocaine in the White House, January 6th, and Crossfire Hurricane,
interesting to know.
the prosecutorial decisions will lay at the Department of Justice, but we are rigorously investigating them.
The word
and I think
was
we've
the
developed some
cocaine
great
was
leads.
not for
and
Hunter.
I also think we're not going to wait for any blue ribbon commissions. That's up to
It was for
Congress.
the
If they
big
want to
man.
do that, that's totally fine. They're a coordinate branch of government. But we've got
Which makes sense on one of two fronts. In both, it just correlates with everything that's going on. Option A, Biden was in the middle stages of Alzheimer's or dementia, and he would use that to speed up his brain and try to momentarily have these ups and think clearly. Option one. Option two, he's admitted that he has stage 5 prostate cancer. And I said before this as well. You cannot be the president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, with the best doctors in the world, the most protected man in the world. He is the most important person in that building. And not a single person knew he had cancer.
answers coming on all these matters.
So it could be possible he's using it for
promise?
that.
I do.
Your deputy, before he became
Because
deputy,
if you're
said
taking
this.
treatments
Like many people, I
that are
believe the
making you
FBI
tired, then you need something to boost you.
I knows the identity of this pipe bomber on January 6th, 4 years ago, and just doesn't want to tell us because it was an inside job.
Why didn't they find the bomber, the pipe bomber? You know, they know who the pipe bomber is. The FBI knows who it is.
Does the FBI know who it is?
The FBI, under me and Dan Bongino's leadership, has reestablished that investigations of great public importance that almost blew up the DNC and RNC in Washington, D.C., an area in which then Vice President Harris was in the vicinity of, is something that needs to be answered. And we learned that FBI leadership in the prior administration slow-rolled and basically shut that investigation off. So we turned it on. And we have some great leads, and Dan is actually going to talk about that when he does Fox and Friends tomorrow.
Okay. You don't want to give us a little something?
I can't get ahead of everybody.
All right.
I'll give you a spoiler. I'm going to comment on that
walk on
interview
the
as well.
beach with the shells 8647.
This stuff's disgusting.
You know, the FBI is bigger than any leader it's ever had or ever will have. And James Comey's a private citizen, and he can walk around the beach and talk about seashells and Crayola crayons for all I care about, and talk about how we're the conspiracy theorists. But I just remind the American people of one thing. When that man was the leader of the FBI, he perpetrated the largest criminal conspiracy, packaged political information from overseas, took it to a federal FISA court, and illegally surveilled a political opponent. So I won't be lectured on how to run this FBI from that man.
Well, James Comey was just on talking about all of that, the seashells and everything, and he also talked about
James Comey
Obviously, you
doesn't
start
have
with the
this
fact
man's
that the guy
info.
has literally nothing in his entire adult life that prepares him for this role, and so that's deeply concerning to start with. In a way, I kind of a little bit sorry for the guy. He's barked at the FBI nonsense for years, and now he not only caught the car, he's got to drive the car, and so that is a daunting task for him. I hope he lets the career people do their jobs, but they've already forced out a bunch of good career people and sent a chill through the organization.
Career politicians.
That's James Comey.
If he wants to come after me, no problem. I've been living rent-free in that guy's head for years, and that's just a bonus. Do you know how many copycats we've had to investigate as a result of that beachside venture from the former director?
Is that right?
Do you know how many agents I've had to take offline from chasing down child sex predators, fentanyl traffickers, terrorists? Because everywhere across this country, people are popping up on social media and think that a threat to the life of the President of the United States is a joke and they can do it because he did it. That's what I'm having to deal with
Useful idiots.
every single
I talked
day.
about this
and that's
before.
what I'm having to pull my agents and analysts off because he thought it was
That's what
funny
Comey wants to
to
do.
go out there and make a political statement.
He's not going to do anything
86-47,
himself.
The president
He will
said that
get
he
useful
believed it
idiots
was
to do
an
it for him.
assassination message. On assassination attempts, I did ask the president on the Middle East trip about this. Is there frustration on your part? Will we get transparency? Will we know the bottom line story?
It's very interesting because we have great people. I think Pam is incredible. I think Kash is incredible. I'm relying on my people to tell me what it is. You know, we have deep-seated craziness in this country, and I'm relying on my people, and so far they're good. But so far and in this case it's Secret Service, they tell me it's fine. But it's a little hard to believe, to be honest with you, okay? It's a little bit hard to believe as I get that throbbing
by a
feeling.
bullet.
You know, it sounds like he wants more about at least the Butler guy that we don't know a lot about.
We all
Will we know
deserve
a lot
more
about him?
answers.
Is there more to know?
I don't know that there's more to know, but you're going to know.
I'm going to disagree with him here. There is more to know. Who incited this? He was a useful idiot. Where was this kid taking his from? He was also in a BlackRock commercial. It's kind of odd that somebody who hates the President of the United States just happens to be in a BlackRock commercial and just happens to be on the radar of agencies like this. You know, like NSA and all these groups, they scrub our media and they look for postings, right? And they flag them so they know where these pockets of crazies are coming from in the rhetoric that they're spewing because there's algorithms that flag this stuff. It's very possible that people influenced them.
Everything we know. And that's the other thing we do.
Besides
We take
the
assassination
hateful
attempts, and
politicians'
especially the
rhetoric.
President of the United States, extremely seriously. And we don't feel that the American people have been given the information they need on that. And we're digging through the files, and we're getting them a more robust picture of what happened and whether or not there were any connections.
I get all that, and I also understand investigations underway, and there's potential prosecutions for people who are living, but he's dead. And we knew a lot more about a lot of different people than we know about that guy. And you know, there's people that circulate all kinds of stuff, that it was an inside job or there was foreign influence or whatever. Can we say that it's not that?
And that's a great example of people looking for things where things don't exist. In that specific case, since that individual is dead, we are able to say a lot more, unlike the Merchant case in New York, which is ongoing, and whether or not there are any connections. We have definitively given that information over.
Director Patel, stand by if you would.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here.
All right. So, at least for the most part, it's the interview that I could get so far. I find it to be very interesting. I'm going to give you my take on a couple things. I already said, don't let the left divide and conquer us. That's the game. They know that we're unified. And why would you take your talking points from people who despise you and the person you just voted for? Number one. Number two, I want to give Brett Baier a lot of credit. And I think it's not about him being on Fox, because I've told you before, I think Fox isn't run by neocons or leftist sympathetic people. It's just that the other networks are so far left, it makes Fox look like they are centrist conservatives. They're not conservative at Fox at all. But Brett Baier, and from what I could see for over a decade of watching him do interviews and commentary, he does a very straight-laced, classic style presentation that you would liken to a Dan Rather or a Ted Koppel, or as I put in my original shorts, just the facts. There's not many of him left. I used to think Chris Wallace was one of them, but he went off the deep end with Trump derangement syndrome and railroaded his entire career and soiled his father's reputation, which is a shame because, you know, the Wallace name was a big name in the news. And I guess maybe his father had the same beliefs that Chris had, but his father had the self-control to be professional about it and not just like let it spew out of him like he had Tourette's. So the Dan Bongino follow-up interview tomorrow or tonight will be very interesting. I'll be commenting on that. I wanted to thank everyone that has been watching me and has watched this episode. This is my first special where something comes up and I'm just going to talk about, you know, that one topic specifically. And I will have other specials, and I have an entire segment coming up eventually. And it's still a work in progress with a person who I'd be partnering with to do this portion, called Intellectual Fiber. If it all works out, the point of Intellectual Fiber, this person is very passionate and very well versed in the areas of the health industry, the education industry, and they have a take that is not a typical American's take. It's someone I respect very, very deeply, and their opinion means a lot to me. So if it all works out and we can come up with a mechanism for that person to be on my show, then that will be coming as well. And like I said, we're going to call it Intellectual Fiber. This person does not want their identity known as of now in general. This is my project, and this is just a person I know who has a lot to say but doesn't want to be the focus of what's being said. They just want their message to get out there, and they have a lot to say on stuff. So anyways, once again, thank you very much. And coming soon, it's in the works. I do have a firearms manufacturing business. It's Slover Arms LLC. I'm in the process of doing some transition with it, but it will be fully up and running like I had gotten things going with it before. I'm just in a transition period with it in locations. And if you notice, I put a commercial out about it, and soon I will be able to um, be a dealer in that space again. So that's another thing that I'm working on in conjunction, and why I tied the company into this show into something called Press Check. For those of you who don't know, because I've been asked a few times, just to re-explain, a press check is when you take a pistol, you look inside the chamber by pressing on the slide and checking if something is in it. Sometimes you want your pistol to be loaded, sometimes you don't. The point is to check its condition. Here's an example. Right now, I'm doing this show with a firearm that has a magazine of hollow points in it. It would be wise to drop the magazine through a press check and make sure there's not a bullet in the chamber. Why? Because I don't want the gun to be able to be fired. On the flip side, if I was to take this out into town as a person who legally obtained the ability to carry a pistol, I would want to check it to make sure there is a bullet in the chamber. Now, this gun is equipped as a safety, so I'd recommend you do that as well. But I'm not doing a gun safety video right now. But just like the pistol, checking its condition, whether it's loaded, whether it's safe, we need to do that with the news. We need to be checking our press and making sure, are they safe? Are we safe from them? Are they giving us real information? Or are they coming with a loaded agenda? And I don't care if it's Fox. I don't care if it's my favorite person that I like to listen to. With Dan Bongino being the assistant director of the FBI, I used to love his show. I used to put a lot of trust into the things he said. He has never let me down. That doesn't mean I'm not going to watch him and scrutinize him. And if he does something stupid, then I'm going to call it out. I will disagree with him. If it's really, really stupid or criminal, I'll be telling everybody that I've lost faith in him, and we will take it from there. But I will say, for full disclosure, I have not at this point. I think that the left want us to. If you can erode our trust with them running the FBI, then everything else that they do has been trivialized, and then from there you can just pick it apart. So even when they're doing something honest, you won't know the difference, and it's psyops type of stuff. It's a lot of disinformation. So that's what I have to say about that. Amy, did you hear that? When a 911 call is made, priority 1 response time is 15 minutes. So anyways, thank you very much for checking out this special episode. And I look forward to my next show on Saturday when I air episode 3. So I'll see you then. Thank you. Hey everyone, thank you for checking out Press Check. Please like, share, and subscribe.